Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fearless. Today, I have a guest joining us on the show. So, again, I'm going to say it every single time. I'm very, very excited. I'm really excited for the topic we're going to talk about today because this is something that I have used myself and I have seen have really tremendous impact and outcome for a lot of women that I have worked alongside. So I'm really excited to go a bit deeper on this topic today, and I have found an incredible guest to come and help us have this conversation. So I would really like to invite and welcome Susie onto the show today from Elevate with Susie. She is a self-concept coach and an identity mentor. You all know how much I love talking about identity level work and how foundational and important it is. So I'm so excited to have an expert come in to go deeper. And Susie's work, it blends science and spirituality. So you know I'm here for that as well. Using subconscious tools, nervous system regulation, and self-concept shifts to help women stop playing small and fully step into their power. Yay! She is on a mission to help women remember who they are, reclaim their worth, and create a life that reflects their elevated identity. So, welcome to the show, Susie.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I'm so honored to be here and thanks for the beautiful introduction. And yeah, I'm just really excited to dive into this topic.
Yeah.
It's changed my life so far and I just can't wait to share it with more women. So yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, I reached out to Susie and invited her onto the show just from connecting on Instagram and seeing her work. I'm like, yes, this is part of the conversation we need to be having. So where I would really love to start, because we are talking about
Mhm.
self-concepting, we are talking about identity level work and subconscious work. So, can we please start with your story? Because people don't get into this work just by chance.
Yeah.
There's always a story, there's a
Mhm.
moment, there's a series of
Yeah.
events that actually wakes us up to the fact that, oh, maybe there's something going on at a bit of a deeper level I need to tune into here. So I'd love to know, like, what was that for you? How did you get into this work? And how did you come to this, approach of blending the science and the spiritual in your approach?
So yeah, I agree, Crystal. There's always a catalyst, I like to say, that kind of
Mm.
catapults you into your personal growth journey and sort of a bit more of digging into why sort of we um are the way we are or we act the way that we act, this kind of thing. So for me personally, it was a breakup a couple of years ago. And I left that breakup realizing that I'd tied a lot of my identity and self-worth into that actual relationship. And I
Mm.
was left sort of feeling a little bit like I didn't really know who I was outside of that relationship without that person in my life. So yeah, so that just kind of catapulted me into the whole personal growth journey. I've read countless books, and I've become a little bit obsessed
Yeah.
with this sort of self-concept journey and truly understanding how much of our identity really plays into every area of our life.
Mm.
Because if we, obviously self-concept is the way we see ourselves in the world and our place in the world, and what we think we're worthy of and all that kind of thing. So that was the catalyst for me. And now I just, yeah, like I said, I really, really want to help other women. And I wish that we could all sort of understand just how much identity really plays into or is a key piece of everything in our lives, really.
Mm.
The science and spirituality part, I think I sort of started to look into both parts, but I've got a science background. I'm a qualified midwife, and I loved the science part of it. And I think it's really important to, I always say, to ground the woo woo in
Yeah.
with a bit of science. For me, that just made it a bit more sort of solidified it a bit more, I suppose. To I guess it's kind of a little bit of my logical side coming out to kind of want to marry the two together. But I think that's a really important way
Yeah.
to take it as well.
Yeah, I love that. I talk about a bridge quite often. So,
Mhm.
you know, um, there is this bridge needed between the 3D and the logic based and the science of it all. And, I guess people talk about it in lots of different ways, but the 5D, the new earth, whatever it is, whatever words resonate for you, the spiritual
Mhm.
aspect. And you do kind of need a bridge. And I talk often a lot about too, this concept that we are cosmic beings having a human experience. And this is
Mhm.
what ties into that identity work.
Yep.
People kind of try and skip the identity work because they go for the spiritual and connect with their higher self and source. But the thing
Yep.
is, you have to know how the body operates, and you have to know how to
Absolutely.
use that system and master that system, which is the identity work, the 3D, the physical body, to
Mhm.
be able to open up more to the spiritual as well. That's sort of how
Yep.
I bridge the two.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the concept of a bridge. I've heard it quite often, and yeah, I think that's a really powerful idea as well to sort of bridge the two together. I suppose,
Yeah.
yeah, it can make
And it
it a
doesn't
bit
feel so
more.
far away.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah.
And if you're someone like me, like when I,
Connected.
a few years ago, 4 years ago, I guess it was, I was none of keep all your woo woo far away. Like it's
Yep.
not real. I don't believe in any of that. Just keep it over there. This is how the
Yep.
world really works. So, it's taken a lot to open up to that, and the science was really what helped me be able to be
Mhm.
open and open my mind to learning more about it, and then
Yeah.
recognizing that the spiritual is just science we
So,
haven't like figured out yet.
yeah.
Haven't
Like, so
necessarily
I
tested it
love
all.
the quote that says, reality is a mental game, it's not a physical game. And I just
Mm,
think that ties in quite nicely with what we're talking about. But I agree. I think the science can be a bit more grounding for people as well to kind of then delve into the spiritual a bit more because there's, research papers
yeah.
and all that kind of thing. If the people are slightly more logical in that sense, then they can also start to marry up the spiritual and be like, oh, hang on, these things kind of match together.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you know him, but I love the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza,
Hmm.
and he does that really well as well. I think creates that really nice bridge between the two. Yeah,
Yes, yeah, absolutely he does. Yeah, big fan of Dr. Joe.
yeah,
Um, so let's
sure,
dive
good.
into the self-concepting. And I loved what you were saying when you were sharing your story about how, this relationship had ended and you recognized that you had
Mhm.
really tied your value, your worth, your identity to that relationship, to that external. And I know in my own experience and with a lot of the women that I have worked with, do work with, like that's common, right? That's the common thing. Our identity is completely built on everything outside of us. And if anything sort of crumbles, we're left with nothing to hold ourselves up with. So,
Yeah.
yeah, can you talk a bit into that and how sort of like the self-concepting helps us to, I guess, rebuild that foundation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really important to have a good foundation of self concept and really understand who you are at a core, not necessarily relying on, external validation. Because I find that if you are relying on the external validation, quite often your internal dialogue is quite negative
Mm.
or you're quite self-critical, I've found as well with a lot of women. So the first port of call I would say to having a basis of a really good self concept and knowing your worth and knowing who you are and knowing your value outside of that external validation would just be to have a really good internal dialogue with yourself.
Mm.
So, just speaking kindly to yourself, being your own hype person, really. And I think a really good or practical step that your listeners could take away from this would be to do mirror work.
Yeah.
I am so all over mirror work. Like in the morning, when you're brushing your teeth, or even just after, lock eyes with yourself in the mirror. Tell yourself how much you love yourself 5 times, 10 times, however many times you want. Give yourself a big hug. Tell yourself, why am I so beautiful today? Or why do you get everything you want? Or everything's always working out for you. And it's gonna feel, can I swear?
Yes. Oh, yes,
Because I
please
do.
do.
Sometimes I'm so passionate, I just swear a little bit.
Me
But
too.
yeah, you can literally have whatever the fuck you want. And yeah, that's how you should be speaking to yourself in the mirror
Hmm.
in the morning. And it's just really powerful. And it is going to feel weird as hell the first time you do it. Like, I remember first starting mirror work and just going, what am I even doing?
Yeah.
This is so strange. But it's become part of my morning routine now. And I swear by it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I agree 100%. I do that. I've got
Yeah.
little signs on my mirror to remind
Yeah.
me. And yeah, and
Oh, I love
anytime,
it.
yeah, I do really love it. And
Yeah.
anytime, something pops up, because I was the woman that was on the outside, super successful, high performing, high achieving. The internal dialogue was like,
Yeah.
terrible. And that's,
Yeah.
I think where people get self-esteem and self-worth and confidence confused, because
Yes.
outside present very confidently.
Oh,
I was a
yeah.
school leader doing all the things, blah blah blah. I perform, I sing, all the things, but the internal dialogue was
Mhm.
very negative.
Sure.
So mirror work has been really important for me to catch that when,
Yeah.
when things pop up that would trigger that old dialogue, that critical
Yeah.
dialogue. Just go to the mirror. We go to the mirror now, and we lock eyes, like you said. We
Yep.
check in, we remind ourselves
Chicken.
that
Yep.
doesn't matter about whatever else is out there. I've got you, and I see
Mhm.
you, and I love you. And I think too,
Yeah.
you kind of ran through it, but for a lot of us, taking the time, even just to tell yourself you can have
Mhm.
whatever the fuck you want. Because
Absolutely.
actually knowing that that's true can take a
Yeah.
long time for people.
Mm. Mhm. That is true. And I think, yeah, a lot of the stuff we're talking about ties into itself. So I think, yeah, with the believing that you can have whatever you want, sort of was a bit of not a slow burner for me, but it's hard, like you say, like a few years ago, I was working as a midwife. I was sort of really burnt out, working really long hours, people pleasing all over the place. And then yeah, come to slowly realize that, hang on, that's not getting me anywhere. And the most important relationship and the person you spend the most time with is yourself, isn't it? So you've got to cultivate that relationship. And
Mm,
just slightly going back to the internal dialogue thing, I think a lot of people think that voice, the inner voice we have, is she's just there, she's just
mm,
nah. But no, you actually need to learn to harness that
yeah.
and realize that it can really work for you. And because um there are no truths other than what our subconscious believes. So things don't mean anything until you assign it meaning. So
Mm,
when you're talking about you can have whatever the fuck you want, just keep repeating that to yourself, being really locking eyes with yourself. But also I think it's about again 101, the internal dialogue.
yeah.
100% is really gonna help with that, because the better that your internal dialogue is, I think, like I touched on earlier, the less you're going to be needing or looking for that external validation, and for
Mm,
others to be saying, oh, you're doing this good thing, or oh, you look really great today in what you're wearing, just those kind of things, yeah. And then you'll start to turn that and look internally for that validation instead. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that inner dialogue is so key. I think sometimes in my journey, it was like affirmations. Okay, so you say them, maybe you'll say them in the morning, maybe you'll say them 3 times a day, maybe you have them recorded and you listen to them. But
Yeah.
the thing is that internal dialogue is going on all the time.
All the
And
time.
what a lot of people sort of do, and I went through that journey too, where you're just like, shut up, I'm not listening to you, and
Yes.
you just ignore it. But that it's still going, like that dialogue is
Mhm.
still going. And that's
Yeah.
where I see the self-concept work coming in, because you do actually
Mhm.
have to shift that dialogue for it to start
Absolutely.
changing your reality and changing that at yourself at that identity level. Like just ignoring it and
Yeah.
saying some affirmations a few times a day, like that's not it.
No, absolutely.
That's not it.
So if we also want to, let's nerd out a little bit, because I love
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, let's
I'm
go.
really into neuroscience and stuff as well. So neuroplasticity, that's
Mhm.
kind of really lights me up. So if you talk about our beliefs, and I touched upon what the subconscious believes is true, your RAS, or your reticular activating system, you're teaching it with your beliefs what to look for and show you in the world, and you're going to have that evidence poured back to you, and then you're going to think, oh, maybe I am this, maybe I am that, or my outfits are terrible, or whatever. But if you switch all of that,
Mm.
starting with your internal dialogue, which then become your beliefs in your subconscious, and then your reticular activating system is going to pick up on that and start to show you the things, the opportunities that you can have whatever the fuck you want, and you've got all these opportunities pouring in that you probably didn't notice at all before because they weren't being shown to you because your
Mm.
key beliefs in the background are not going to show you the evidence. So
Yeah.
I just find it also
I know, it's so
exciting
excited.
and
I'm the
powerful
same.
looking
I'm like,
through.
oh yes, let's geek out because
Brilliant. Oh, let's geek
because
out a wee bit.
this stuff
Yeah.
is so important though,
Yeah.
and it needs to come out of the science textbooks and the journals and the degrees
Mm.
and into
Right
the
on.
light because
Yep.
like I love talking about good old Raz. Like he's great. Raz is great.
Mm.
The bouncer in your brain is awesome
Yep.
if you are telling it the right things. It
Exactly.
only gives you what you tell it is important to
Well,
you.
that's it. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think all of this stuff, I think a lot of people think it's sciencey textbooks, kind of psychology degree based, but it's like, no, you can actually harness it to actually just
Mm.
use to change your reality yourself. And I think I sort of mentioned to you before we got onto the call, but this has completely changed my life, and I just want some more people to understand it. So I think it's important to not understand like completely because it is it can be quite a complex subject to understand,
Mm.
but to just understand our brains a little bit and how they work. I'm reading another really powerful book. I'm not even halfway through it, and I've based my entire life on it. You might know it. It's called Psycho-Cybernetics.
Oh, no, I
Oh, you
don't.
haven't read that one?
No.
Please do. I'll
Okay.
I'll send you links after the show.
Yes.
But it's by a guy called Maxwell Maltz, and he was a plastic surgeon, and he sort of then changed into what did he become a psychologist? I believe, I think,
Mm.
because he'd changed people's faces, and it wouldn't. He found that it wouldn't actually change their sort of outlook on life or how they saw
Mm.
themselves. It was only when he became a psychologist and then sort of looked into more of it, and you need to change the internal image of
Yeah.
yourself. It's not just about
Yeah.
the external. But yeah, I find that
Wow.
book's really
That's a really on the
powerful
nose
as well. I was going somewhere
example,
with a
isn't
point
it?
there. I can't remember.
But it's
It'll
a
come back
really
to
like,
me.
yeah, on the nose example of how it's an inside out job,
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, inside out
Yeah.
job. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can change all the exterior, but if you're not working in that deeper subconscious identity level, it's,
Mhm.
nothing is going to change really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And we're touching upon just speaking about your affirmations.
Mm.
You can say, "Oh, I'm a millionaire. I'm a millionaire. I blah blah blah." It's like if your brain does not believe that, if that belief is not implanted in your subconscious,
Mm.
it's just going to be labeled as bullshit, basically. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I really
Can
think.
we, I feel like that's a really good place and amazing, like somehow we're running out of time already. But anyway,
Oh
we've
wow.
been in a
Okay.
time vortex, but that like we'll go here quickly and then we can always come back. If there's more
That's
questions,
yeah.
we can
We can
come
always
back
do a
and
part two.
we can
Absolutely.
do a
It's like
part
it's
two.
worked out.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But this feels like a good spot to talk about the nervous system regulation because
Mm.
I also find that as you're doing the identity work, and this ties into what's it called? The words aren't going to come now. Nope, it'll come back. But there's a psychological term for it. Oh, disintegration anxiety. So,
Oh,
as you're
I
doing the
might come across
identity
that.
work, yeah, as
Mhm.
you're doing this identity work, and you're shifting who you are at an identity subconscious level, the reptilian part of your brain that can only is, supposed to protect you can only do that based on being able to make predictions. And if you're
Mm.
changing your identity, it can't do its
Mhm.
job. So it creates this sense of anxiety as you're disintegrating one identity and building a new one. And that's
Mhm.
really where I find in my experience that that nervous system regulation is so important because if you are doing this identity
Yeah,
level work
agreed.
wanting to be able to receive and hold more, your nervous system has to be regulated to actually be able to receive and hold it. Otherwise, it's just going
Mhm.
to freak out and like
Yeah,
reject
yeah,
it anyway.
absolutely. Yes, agreed. I look at nervous system work now as being the key piece as
Mm.
well as the other parts. But yeah, because really without the nervous system being regulated, you're just going to be stuck in that fight or flight
Yeah.
response, aren't you? So, and no expansion can be made from a fight or flight response.
Mm.
No, yeah, no expansion can be made in a dysregulated state. So I think it's really, really important to, but I always like to say now that I think nervous system safety is not just a practice, but it should become your state, which
Mm.
is the ultimate goal. You want it to become your overall state. So you're thinking about less reactivity, and yeah, you feel safe to hold more and safe
Mm.
to expand. Um, yeah, because without that, you can't. Yeah, like you were saying, anything new or unfamiliar or
Mm.
outside of what you're normally doing is going to be labeled as unsafe or dangerous to your brain. So you're going to be bringing up all kinds of things like procrastination. Oh, you're going to get a lot of self-doubt, all this
Mm.
kind of stuff thrown at
Mm.
you. And your brain is very tricky. Like, for example, the procrastination thing, going,
Yeah.
oh, I've got this to do. Oh no, let me tidy my room first before I go and do this, or before I start my podcast or
Yeah.
whatever. And then it's like about recognizing that I think it's really powerful to be able to see, hang on, my brain's just up to some trickery here, and it's not, those things aren't actually true.
Yes.
So one of my favorite, just really simple parts of nervous system regulation, I find when changing your identity,
Mm.
is just simple old breath, just
Mm.
breath. I think we really look over how important and potent our breath can be, but just even in the morning, 5 minutes, just heart and brain coherence breathing. So five breath, like 5 second breath in, 5 second breath out, all through the nose, and just kind of just relaxing into your body. And I think
Mm.
that's one of the most powerful things. And just hugging yourself, reminding yourself you're safe and it is safe to expand, and
Mm.
just yeah, constantly telling yourself that it's safe to do these things that I'm doing. It's safe to film this content. It's safe to work on whatever you want to in your business, for example. And just coming back to the breath, and just making sure that you're um regulating in that way. But also another good thing is to remain mindful and present.
Yeah.
So in the present moment, I think is just really important. And your breath is a really good tool to use to bring you back into the present moment. Um, and just ground yourself there. And another thing I find very simple but also very powerful is just to slow the fuck down.
Yeah.
Like, nothing needs to be done urgently,
Yeah.
really, unless it's an ultimate emergency, but that's a different ballgame. But
Yeah.
just slow down. Why are you rushing? Just take your time. Take your time making your breakfast. Take your time, make yourself a nice coffee. Just slowly. I mean, I've got a little candle here. I always have a candle by me. Just, you know, what do they romanticize your life? Basically, is
Yeah.
kind of, I think that term's been used a lot, but those kind of things are really important as well. Just slow down and take your time
Yeah.
with things.
Yeah, I think the trap we get into, and it's a social conditioning, but the trap we
Mhm.
get into is we're like, oh, I want to make changes in my life, so I'm gonna do more things.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, that just overloads your nervous system,
Yep.
and you can actually have more and be more by doing less.
But
And like
doing this is
the
slowing
the
down.
power of stillness and silence, like that
Mhm.
brain heart coherence meditation you're talking about, so powerful.
Yeah.
You can chuck some binaural beats that are at the same frequency of brain
Mhm.
heart coherence on at the same time, and it doesn't take a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's not like you can, but you don't have to sit for half an hour in meditation. Like you don't
No,
have to. You can
exactly.
hack it,
Yeah.
but
I
just
think
creating space to slow down.
yeah, just to jump in there slightly, people always say, "Oh, I don't have time to meditate," and it's like,
Yeah.
have a look at how long you're scrolling or doing
Hmm.
something that's a habit that you know that you need to let go of.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
I did that. I did the maths one time, because that, yep, that one, that's that old chestnut. I
Yep.
did the maths
Mhm.
one time, and if you reappropriated like an hour to 2 hours of your day from something you already do, like Netflix, watching
Yep.
TV, and you end up with 1 to 2 days extra in a week of
Wow.
time that you
Oh my
could
gosh. And I think,
redistribute.
I mean, don't get me wrong, we're all kind of fall into these traps. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm so telling myself off for scrolling and stuff, but I
yeah,
think as long as you can catch yourself when you're doing it, I think that's the most important thing. But yeah, wow, that's really
yeah,
powerful to look at it
yeah.
that way, I think. And it
If
makes you look,
you, what was it? If
yeah,
you
have
wake
it.
up or go to bed an hour earlier or later, and then you redistribute an hour or two in each day,
Yeah.
then yeah, you wind up with 24 to 48 hours extra in the
Wow.
week. Yeah.
Wow, that's something we don't look at, is it?
Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah,
right. And
so good
and
to
I'm
look
the
at it
worst
that
for it
way.
because like yeah, I have and it's all habit based, right? It's all just
Mm-hmm.
habits over time. This is our routine is a habit, our choices are all habitual, and it is
Yep.
about just making conscious choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Because I'm sure that I think Mr. Dispenza talks about this, but how 98% or something, 95% of our day is run on autopilot
Yeah.
of our autopilot habitual things that have come from yesterday. So we're brushing our teeth in the same way, drinking our coffee in the same way, or making our bed in the same way, all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's really important to kind of step outside those when making these changes as well, just to, let your body know that it is okay and it is safe to do things differently.
Mm.
Just to, really simple, change up your routine.
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
from those to get out of that autopilot that we live on so
Yeah.
much, because
I know.
really only 5% of our day is conscious, so we're actually
Yeah.
consciously thinking and creating our day and our reality. It's a really small number, so
It is a really small number. Yeah. And now we're moving into the world of habit installation, and I love that, and I could talk about that for hours
brilliant.
because
Yeah.
that's my jam, like yeah, supporting people in how do we shift habits, and just also knowing you don't have to change it all at once, like just pick one thing again,
Hmm.
because it's about supporting the nervous system and small
Yeah.
changes. A lot of the time people they feel like they have a big problem to solve, so they look for big solutions. This is something my mentor I'm working with at the moment talks a lot about, but it's the small changes over
Mhm.
time that actually creates the big change, not a big
Yeah.
change, because that's not sustainable at the
Hmm.
beginning. It's all this really small changes over
Yeah,
time that what's that
that's
concept in
right.
maths,
And before you
that
know it, big
compounding
years.
interest, right? Compound interest.
Compounding interest,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. Or like a rolling ball gathers no moss, or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Once
yeah.
it's already going, as you gain the
Yes,
momentum.
right. Once you get the momentum going, it's a lot
Mhm. It's
easier. And
easier
also,
to,
like,
yeah.
if you fall off, because it's a process,
Mhm.
rewiring your subconscious, changing your identity, new habits, it's a process.
Of course,
If you
yeah.
fall off, it's not that big a deal because it will be easier to get back on again because you have started to create those new grooves, in terms of
Mm.
your neuroplasticity. You've
The
started to
new,
create them.
great, the new neural
They're there,
pathways.
the
Yeah,
new
and the
neural
more, the
pathways.
more I got at this, but I mean the neural pathways in your brain. I think you
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, yeah,
But the more that you do it, the deeper those grooves are going to be, and then eventually they'll just become your new normal.
yeah. Part
Um,
of who you are,
yeah, part
your
of who you are.
identity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. That's
yeah,
it. The
yeah,
main thing that we're talking about, your identity.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really important. I was going to touch upon an example that I have about this
Yeah.
small habits into big habits, but also bringing in a little bit of the nervous system too.
Mm,
So I very recently, a couple of weeks ago, held my very first in-person live event. Thank you. Which is something that I always wanted to do. And my brain was going, "What are you doing? Don't do this. No
mm.
one's going to buy tickets. Who are you to do this? You're not the expert. That all this kind of stuff." But now that I understand, it's just my brain trying to keep me small and trying
Yeah.
to keep me in the familiar zone, which is labeled as safe. Right.
Yes.
So I really tried my hardest not to, when it was leading up to the event, I wasn't getting overly excited or
Mm.
overly nervous. It was, it was what it was. It was just I got everything ready. It was going to be great because I decided, we haven't touched upon decision making, but I
No.
decided it was going to be awesome, and it was awesome. And that I think is key as well, to make everything feel kind of neutral, not to get
Yeah.
overly excited or overly some kind of emotion, because that is going to cause a spike in your nervous system, and your
Mhm.
nervous system is way more likely to label that as unsafe. So if you just kind of make everything feel kind of, yeah, it is exciting, but it's not, a big spike to be unsafe. And that, yeah, was just a small thing. So that's a way that you can kind of make something seem like a big thing seem like a kind of a small habit that can build into more. It's just
Mm,
to kind of make everything feel a little bit more neutral, so it's a bit more
yeah.
calming for your body. But I think that yeah, like you said, starting off with small habits
Mm,
is a little bit more easier to snowball into those bigger changes that we're after.
yeah.
Because I think people think, oh, I'm going to wake up and be an entirely different person. It's like,
Yeah.
no, we'll just pick a few things to
Yeah.
change, and then eventually it's gonna, lead up
Yeah.
to more.
And it's a spiral. So,
Mhm.
you're gonna be like, I'm making these changes, I'm doing this work, I'm valuing myself. Cool. And then you're gonna hit that again and again and again, but from a different level. So
Yeah.
you'll experience differently, and you'll have growth
Mhm.
to look back on as you get there. But it is a spiral. So it's not like,
Yeah.
there's always going to be something else come up for you to address, or there's always going to be something else to shift. And I think that is where that nervous system regulation again is so important,
Hmm.
because otherwise sort of it gets too hard, right? It gets too hard, and you put it down because like this it hurts too much. It,
Yeah.
it takes too much effort. It like, I don't want to feel this way. Like, it's too uncomfortable. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's right. Yeah, I think yeah, a lot of us need to understand that the uncomfortable discomfort is not unsafe. It's
mm,
not, something to be feared, but it's actually something to be pushed through. And then your body will go, oh, hang on, we didn't die, everything's
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really important as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something else my mentor says quite frequently. He
Mhm.
says, everything you want is on the other side of fear.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Mm.
There's a girl I follow on Instagram, and her tagline or brand name, I'm not sure, but it's the other side of brave. So it's kind of
Yeah.
similar, like everything is on the other side of you
Yeah.
being brave and stepping outside your comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay. We'll wrap it up because it is time, but I have
Okay.
really, really loved this conversation. And I think a part two would be fantastic.
Oh, I
Um,
totally agree. I'm
yeah.
so up for a part two. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
more
So
to
we
uncover.
we'll talk about that. But before we do go, I have one question that I ask everybody who comes on to the show. So I would love your answer as well, because
Sure.
you have already sort of talked about it a lot throughout this episode. So my question for you is, what does the word fearless mean to you?
The word fearless. So I had touched upon this in my event actually. So a woman without fear doesn't exist. You are
Mhm.
not going to find a woman that is completely fearless. So, fearless to me means stepping through that discomfort and hearing your brain, your subconscious going, no, you can't do this. Who are you to do this? But actually, to step through that and
Yeah,
then see you're completely fine. You
yeah.
didn't die, you're alive, everything's good. And that to me would be being fearless.
Love it. I was driving my kids to school this morning, and I had this like thought drop in of on this exact topic. You know how in the Avengers, I think it's Hulk talks about how like he's always angry, like that's how he
Mhm.
manages
That's
it.
a
I'm like,
bad
I'm
baseline.
always scared.
There's
There's
always
always this level of fear running underneath, but you just
Mhm.
do it
You do it.
anyway.
I
Yeah.
think honestly that this is another thing that completely shifted the game for me, and kind of started my business, and I quit my job and blah blah blah, traveled and stuff. Is that people are all scared. We've all got
Yeah.
fear. You're not going to find anyone. You look at people and you think, oh my gosh, they're running this really cool business and they're doing this and that, and it's like, they're just doing the damn thing. That's
Yeah.
one I love saying that as well. Just go and do the damn thing because they just push past that voice and they're just
Yeah.
doing it anyway with the fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really
Amazing.
powerful.
Okay. So, if people want more or they want to connect with you or they want to know more about any events you're coming up, just let us know,
Yeah.
like, what have you got going on at the moment and where can we find you?
Yeah, thank you so much. So you can find me on Instagram at Elevate with Susie, but I'm probably more, I'm a little bit more active on TikTok at Elevate with Susie. I also have a YouTube channel, the same name, Elevate with Susie or Susie Tosh. You can find me on there. So I'm gonna have a lot more content about these kind of conversations coming up. Um, and at the moment, I've just had my in-person event, but I'm probably going to have another one. It's going to be like kind of a rolling thing, and they're called Evolve events. And so there's nervous system regulation and a few teaching moments about your subconscious and all that kind of stuff. But I also have a self led on demand program that people can jump into as well if they feel called to, called the Self Elevation Experience, which yeah is just really good. It's lots of little modules that you can kind of keep and revisit when you need to, and a lot of practical things as well. So yeah, you can find that the links are all on my socials and stuff. So yeah.
Ah, perfect. Thank you so much. And I'll also get those links and put them in the show notes. So if you're
Thank you.
listening on Instagram, Apple, Spotify right now, you can go right now to the show notes and connect with
Brilliant.
Susie. And
Thank you
thank you
so
so much.
much for having me, Crystal. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I look forward to part two. It's been an honor.
Yes,
Thank
me
you.
too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.